If you love the CFL, you're really in the thick of it. But if you really love football, like my guest Britton Gray and I both do, this is like the best time of the year for you because you have CFL basically heading into their home stretch. You have U Sports starting soon. And plus, if you're really big sicko, college football starts this weekend in the States, and the NFL is 15 days away. But before we get into all that, the Saskatchewan Roughriders have suffered a couple unfortunate losses, and I have one question for you. I don't want to talk about the games at all. What's the pulse of the fan base more than anything at the moment?
Cautious optimism that like they still think this is a very good team. They still
Yeah.
think this team has what it takes to go on a run. But the last two games, you're not pressing the panic button, but you're finding where the panic button is because this Argos game. Now the Argos, in my opinion, are kind of the weirdest team to get a pulse on
Mm-hmm.
this season in the CFL. But you never know what you're going to get from them. But if the Riders come out and they make the same mistakes, it's penalties, it's miscues on their end. If that happens a third straight game, then I think panic starts to set in about if this team can overcome A, some of the injuries, and B, a kind of late season swoon with how Edmonton is continuing to play.
The other thing I look at with that too is the fact that after this game for Saskatchewan, obviously they head into a big rivalry set with the Blue Bombers, and if the Blue Bombers win this week, which right now, according to we're going to get into the lines in a little bit, it's looking they're a little bit of an underdog this week at home against the Alouettes. But if you go into those games with three straight losses, you have that potential for them to catch the ground. With the fact too, I'm still saying this. I think there's a very good chance the crossover takes effect this year.
Yeah, I think so. I do. It feels like there is going to be a Western team making the crossover. I mean, Hamilton could go on a run with their quarterback situation. You never know with Trey Ford. Like I said, Toronto's kind of the weirdest team. I'm having an issue trying to figure out exactly what you're going to get from them every week. But yeah, I view this next 3-game stretch before the Riders bye. You have to at least be 2-1 to feel good about this team heading into that final stretch.
And with Toronto, I will say this the best I can. They are a 5-5 team who can beat anyone, who can lose to anyone. But I think if they really run into a better team like they did last week against the Elks, they're not going to win. It's just as simple as that. I feel like they can basically, when I say beat anyone, like if you look at who they've beaten this year, like they beat the Lions, they beat the Stampeders. They also got dog walked by the Stampeders on right. They actually got stampeded on by the Stampeders in the Stampede Bowl. It's a lot of stampeding that happened to them. Like they lost to the Bombers, they lost to the Alouettes. They obviously everyone gets a free bingo square in the nation's capital, and right now they're at a split with Hamilton. So it's really if they play it's the same sort of thing with them. If they play mistake-free football and they just kind of play, because I'll be honest with you, this Saturday's game was probably the best three-phase football game that they played all season. Like offense looked great, defense looked great, special teams was good, considering the fact it was my first ever weather delay in my CFL covering history. But the fact that it was pouring rain and the field goal kicker went 4 for 5. The fact that Chad, like, he had the one interception, but it was a little. But then my big thing with them was just the offensive line probably had their best game of the season, and considering that there's a couple of those guys that are banged up right now, they're like I don't know if Toronto. They basically, how do I say this? They're like the team where it's like, hey, you looked great. Can you do it again? And then they don't do it again. You know, they're the perfect metaphor for them is one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah, I agree. But also at the same time, when Chad Kelly is on and not throwing 4 interceptions in a game,
Yeah.
when they play those 3 phases, I look at that team as they could give Montreal a chance, a shot in the playoffs. You never know. It's one game. And sometimes they play like, okay, I could see this team maybe pulling off an upset. And other times, I think they're going to lose by 50 to the Alouettes. So, as I said, the Argos right now, I can't get a grasp on what you're getting week to week. And you mentioned it. They take steps forward, they take steps back right now.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, though, and that is the consistency with this team has been coaching. I feel like, look, I don't think he's going to win because I feel like it's probably Mark Killam's award to lose at this point. But Mike Miller, I feel like, could be a very good contender for Coach of the Year just for the fact that he's basically taken a 5-13 team from last year and made them, I don't want to say respectful, but he's made them just like a more complete unit. Like last year there was a bunch of weird friction and just everything like that. We didn't know how it was going to be considering, you know, when you go from someone like a Ryan Dinwiddie who had nothing but success to, hey, here's this quarterback coach that like people seem to like, to where now it's the perfect mix of a boss where, hey, we can go get a beer after work, but between when it's working hours, I'm going to remind you that I'm the man in charge. And that's the exact vibe I kind of have gotten from Mike throughout the season. Kind of like that, and also too, guys like playing for him.
Yeah, it's been impressive his first year as a head coach here in the CFL, but let's be honest, in the East, it's going to be Jason Moss because that team might have the division wrapped up. I think I saw as early as week 14. If everything kind of goes right, they could do it. I don't know if that's still the case, but it's going to Jason Moss, unfortunately, because that team is a running through everyone right now.
Oh, I just meant I was looking at like a general scope, like a general scope of it. I would if I had to rank the coaches in the East, obviously it's I would have Moss as my number one too, just because for not the fact that Montreal's as good as they are, it's the fact that they are as dominant as they've been, because they're not just beating teams, they're just like they're kind of racking up points and they're just like, we don't care who's in the way. My only concern with them is just they are very much a what we saw from the 23 Argonauts, where it's just, hey, we can see what happens when it's going good, but the second it goes bad and panic sets in, I want to know, is that do we see like the Alouette team we saw last year that got to the Grey Cup, the team 23 who went into BMO Field and upset that 16-2 Toronto Argonaut team? That's the mystery of the Alouettes I want to figure out, is how do they do down this stretch, because they got to play BC twice still, which I think the Lions are that, like, honestly, that Nathan Rourke injury may have been a blessing in disguise for that squad, because the defense has gotten better. He looked great on Sunday. I know, obviously, it came at the expense of the Riders, but just basically, they're the kind of team right now where it's like it's clicking at the right time. They have to play you guys twice. I know there's the one matchup on Thanksgiving. I believe it's a home and home as well, and a short week home and home, if I'm not mistaken. To where with the Argonauts, there's a very good chance that the next time they play, which I find it funny that them and the Alouettes, they played in week 2, and then they played in week 21. Meanwhile, they play all these other West. They played every other team in the league up until then, and then they come to Toronto, to where that could be the dust and crumb Montreal Alouettes coming into Toronto at the end of October, just because that's a weekend that's going to be fun, just because I love the fact that they scheduled you guys against the Elks, up against the Red Blacks and the Ticats. And I've started saying this, but if you choose Ticats and Red Blacks, someone's going to knock at your door and ask if you're okay.
Yeah. Credit to the schedule makers in that regard, because there's been some issues I've taken with the schedule. But yeah, I mean, adversity is a good thing throughout a football season. It helps bring you together. The BC Lions, I will say, you always wonder, did they have to peak too early because of their the way they started the season? They've been playing playoff football almost for the last little bit here, but I mean, that's a good team there. And yeah, I mean, Rider fans are hoping adversity is a good thing, because that's what this team is dealing with right now.
With the injuries for the Riders, from what I've heard, it seems Roland Milligan probably not coming back this year. But what is something that, because I know also the Argonauts injury list is quite extensive heading into this Saturday night's contest. But what is it looking like for the Riders? Is there any of those names like a Keon Schaefer-Baker and AJ Ouellette that could come back in the lineup? Or is it still probably looking like next week or after the Banjo Bowl?
It's going to be after the Banjo Bowl for those guys. I think that they're going to have to get re-put on the 6-game injured list. Keon Schaefer-Baker, I'm still not even 100% you're going to see him again this season. It was funny. Corey Mace was asked, with Tavon Campbell and Keon Schaefer-Baker, they were injured at the same time. Just, do you expect them to be season ending? He said one for sure probably is. Probably not the other one, but he wouldn't give away which one was which. So he's being coy with that. I'm not sure if you're seeing him or Tavon Campbell back. AJ Ouellette, I think you will, but I think he's going to be put on the 6-game injured list once more, maybe brought off after another 3 games there. And the Riders haven't practiced yet this week. They had the extra day off. There go the Dogs. But Sam Emilus, we don't know what's going on with him. He left that game a little bit not early, was the Riders' final offensive play, but he went up. He came down hard. It looked like he landed hard on his tailbone. We don't know what his status is going. He was limping a little bit in that game as well, just coming back from a foot injury. What's his status? Of course, that receiver room already down. And we saw it today. They signed Shamar Bridges to a contract, right? So they're already bringing in some reinforcements. But in terms of injuries, not a lot of like, hey, they'll be back right away. A couple of them I think you'll see back, but not until after this next bye week, I think.
I only ask that just because you want to see these guys back. Because with these
Hmm.
games too, I feel like you don't get that asterisk in the CFL like you do in the NFL if a team's banged up, to where it's like, oh, they were riddled with injury, so it's kind of like a free score in the bingo card. I think with the Riders, it's been bad luck, but I think also too, I think Trevor Harris is kind of going through the motions right now, to where he's got to kind of remind himself, who he is. Like, not in the sense of like the quarterback he can be, but he has to remind himself, what, hey, you are that champion. It's kind of like when Cody Fajardo had his down years the last couple seasons, and then you started to see him play, his brand of football that we've come to know Fajardo for. It's kind of the same parallels, I feel like, with Harris, where he just needs to have that game where he kind of reminds everyone, hey, you know what, I'm the man, I'm good. But one point I also heard this week too with the Riders is just travel has not been their friend the last couple weeks, because if you look at it, they go from coming east to Hamilton to then going back home to then going far west coast to play in Vancouver on Sunday to now, I believe the next you can is right now Saskatchewan. Is it so? It's 8:50 p.m. as we're recording this right now. Is it 6:50 or is it
Yeah,
7:50?
6:50 right now.
So Saturday's kickoff will be at 5 o'clock. Got it.
Hmm.
So basically, with the next two home games, they're in their time zone, and then for the game in Winnipeg, then it's only at I'm gonna guess that would be a 2 o'clock p.m. kick.
I believe so.
As you know, the
What
CFL loves
time
it.
is the kickoff in that game?
Unfortunately for me, I'll be missing that game because the Argonauts play at 1 o'clock, and the CFL decided to do
Yeah.
games at 1, 4, 7, and 10. Which,
2
if
p.m. Yeah.
I'm going on a side tangent with that, because I love the fact how every game is like a team's normal time slot. Hey, Toronto, Ottawa, 1 o'clock makes sense. Banjo Bowl at 4 makes sense. Battle of Alberta at 7 makes sense to a degree. But then the Montreal Alouettes and their fans are like, we have to wait till 10 o'clock at night to watch our team play.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Riders do have a game against the Lions, September 25th, an 8:30 p.m. Regina start time, and then that Thanksgiving one against the Alouettes is an 11 a.m. start time. So still some weird time slots they have to deal with.
The 11 a.m. ones I feel like is more of a disadvantage than the 8:30 p.m. ones, because that's the body clock going forward as opposed to going back. But also, we see this all the time, mainly with when a West Coast team comes east, more or less in the NFL, where it's like, hey, the team that, their body clock's at 10 o'clock in the morning, at 11 o'clock in the morning, like you mentioned, to where it's, hey, now you have to be up and ready to play a game at 1 p.m.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Something they have to deal with. But going back to Trevor Harris, I think for him, just with the way his game is, it's so methodical,
Yeah.
precise, and surgical. I think you're starting to see some of these injuries take a toll on this team with the wide receivers. You could make an argument that one of the interceptions, the one to Dylan Jetty didn't run the proper route all the way through and allowed the defensive back to come in front of the football. You
Yep.
saw some anger from Trevor Harris there. The other interception he threw, who was he throwing to? Sam Emilus or Keyshawn Johnson? It felt like there's just some miscommunication because guys have been out of the lineup. I think once you get some of these guys back, and Sam Emilus, hopefully he's back for another week. Once you get Shamar Bridges more involved into the offense here, I think you'll see a little bit better Trevor Harris. But right now, it just feels like this team isn't firing on the offensive side of the football due to the injuries, due to some new guys having to step in, and all of a sudden, penalties is an issue for this team. They were one of the least penalized teams until these past 2 weeks. Now they've shot right up to near the top, I believe. And so they have to clean that up. They know they have to clean that up. That's part of that championship DNA. That's why the panic button isn't being hit yet, because you believe in this leadership group. You believe in Corey Mace to get these sort of mental things kind of figured out.
Yeah. Injuries is not injuries. Penalties is a big one too, because like even I'll go back to my game from Saturday night, but Hamilton, their right tackle could have been called for offside or proceed. I know it's called procedure in the CFL, but it's always false start in my brain. Could be called for a false start, just like so much where I'm just like, right away, move. Or I love it too, like when they go into the waggle and you clearly see a guy's foot step in front of the blue line before the center has snapped the ball to the quarterback, to where Trey took that on his head and took responsibility and accountability for it. So I completely get the angle with there. But then also, like you said, it's the fact that you're still not Trevor's learning the new guys, but more the new guys have to learn what's Trevor's cadences, what's Trevor's playbook, where's he going to go if I call XYZ route? That's the kind of thing I feel like these guys have to know, to where even with a Shamar Bridges, I find it very intriguing because you have this receiver who, I don't want to say it was a surprise cut from the Ticats, but I was kind of like, huh. Because I remember him, like, I think it was last year, 2 years ago, he was lighting it up. He was playing really good football. And then all of a sudden it's just, yeah, hey, you're not exactly needed anymore. But it's like, hey, we don't have a home for you here. To where now I feel like he's someone that can kind of come in and, learn that playbook quickly in Sask. I feel like this Saturday, I don't even want to say it's a get right game for the Riders. I feel like this game more is just for both teams, are we sure they're good? Because I feel like for the Riders, it's kind of that, hey, are we sure you are who we think you are, who you were last year? And then for the Argonauts, I think it's just a straight up, if you can go in there and show the world, hey, you sweep the Riders, last time was a home game, this time it's an away game.
A home game.
I had to make fun of that. I have to mention that because it's ridiculous how funny that is.
Yeah.
But for the Argonauts, I think it's more or less because if they go out there and they lose this game by 20 or 30 points, it's just like the same thing. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. They go in there and say if this is a close fought game like last time, because the last time these two teams played, it was a really good game, 40-34. So if it's a game like that, I feel like it's a loss to where it's stomachable for the fan bases, especially the Riders, considering that now will be 3 games. And then for Toronto, it's kind of win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. But if someone gets skunked, that's where I think the panic kind of, not panic, but it's more, I'll call it pressure more than panic starts to set in. Just because with, both teams, you have because with Toronto then obviously going into Labor Day, you have them going into Hamilton to where you can potentially have Hamilton win the season series, and that could be the difference between, playing on Halloween or being, let's call it what a spade. We'll call being in Cancun. But then you have a Riders team to where if the Bombers can, I don't want to say take care of the Alouettes because I just don't want to pick against them right now, but if you have a Bombers team that can look good and hang with a bunch of Alouettes, that's almost, blood in the water for a shark that wears blue and gold that resides in the Manitoba, where I don't think a shark exists outside of a zoo or an aquarium.
No.
There's any beaches or oceans in the great province of Manitoba.
Not in Manitoba. I mean, yeah.
There may be beaches, but no oceans.
Yeah, we'll go with that. No salt water. You're early.
Yeah, no salt water in Manitoba.
Yeah, so this game, I think even if one of these teams loses, but they're in it, they're playing well, it just you lose on a last-second field goal or something happens, you can kind of stomach that.
Yes.
Both these teams have to prove they're making steps forward. Like I said, Toronto, I have no idea what you're getting week to week. They have to prove some consistency. The Riders look like they're regressing the past couple of weeks when they've played out there in terms of penalties being an issue, the miscues. You need to see some positive steps being taken to still feel good about this team. I'm not calling it a must-win. I'm not saying if the Riders lose, it's over. They're not going to make the playoffs or it'll be the crossover team. But you have to see some improvement this week because it is starting to look like it's a trend that this team is on and one they have to buck quickly.
That's it. Because then I will say this, if they lose on that Labor Day Sunday on September 6th, that's when the panic button. Mm-hmm. Right now, if they lose this game, even if it's close, I think right now you have the key in the hand. Then you put the key in to unlock the button. But if you lose this Saturday and you lose next Sunday, that's where you smack the button. Meanwhile, for Toronto, I feel like if they were to go between now and Labor Day, if they do go 1-1, which would get them to 6-6, they're kind of sitting pretty because I've always looked at the season as if they had gone 3-4 or 4-3 during that 7-game road trip. Even though, like I said, I called it a home game, it's still a road trip. They're fine. Hey, they went 3-4. And they're 2-1 right now. And if they can finish this next stretch 1-1, meaning you go 3-2, that's something I think any Argonaut fan will take, especially considering last year at this time, this was a team where it was like, hey, they were starting to reel off some wins, but we all kind of figured, yeah, this team's not really it, to where now you kind of win these next 2 games if you're Toronto. I'm going to say this because I feel like it could happen. They're going to beat Sask. They're going to beat Hamilton, and then they're going to give the REDBLACKS their first win of the season on September 12th. I feel like it's what's going to happen. Like the ghost of Shawn Burke has departed the nation's capital, and now Ryan Dinwiddie's going to start reeling off wins.
Yeah, that's a short week that the Argos have the REDBLACKS on that week. So that's kind of where you're maybe looking at the possible 1 win there. Yeah, and for the Riders looking ahead, as I mentioned, I think you have to go 2-1 over this next 3-game stretch.
Yeah.
And what gives you some maybe positivity, and this is another kind of shot at the CFL schedule making, is the Riders and Alouettes, the first time they play, the Alouettes might be playing backups.
Yeah.
It's that late in the season. The Alouettes could have things locked up. If you're the Riders and Rider fans, you're looking at, okay, maybe we aren't facing the A's team. If you're a football fan, you want to see this rematch in week 1 or week 2 between these two, right? So, but that is one positive, I guess, thing you can look at, is that maybe Montreal, it won't be as daunting of a task to maybe get 2 wins there.
Yeah, and with the schedule making thing, I understand hosting the West Final at home, but I always feel like the Grey Cup champion should be the first team to kick off every single season, kind of like in the NFL, how Super Bowl champion gets the first game. That's when your banner goes up. That's when it's a celebration for the fans. I feel like they should always do that. I know 2 years ago they did Montreal against Winnipeg in Winnipeg. The Alouettes were a heavy underdog, but they still won the game. But that's neither here nor there. And if the schedule makers were perfect, our lives would be a lot easier. But it's not. But no,
apparently the schedule's done before the Grey Cup is finished, so that's part of it.
I feel like you should do it afterwards, but then I feel like I understand, because considering I don't believe Mosaic Stadium shares fully with anyone, but you have at least BC, Edmonton, and Toronto who have a mix of MLS, some for concerts that they've worked with. I know Hamilton does share with Forge, but I don't think that's too much of a stress. I feel like it's more just with the MLS club, and like I said, to the concert extension as well. Because I don't know what BC plays, but I know Commonwealth has got its fair share of big acts that have come into that. The concrete castle of the north, as Mark Killam just dubbed it. But no, that's another qualm on its own.
They like to get the schedule out for before Christmas, right? That's why they like to do it, so people can plan their summer, buy the season tickets for Christmas gifts, and in order to do that, I guess you miss out on some marquee matchups.
Yeah, but I do understand, though, making the one game, my only qualm with the Thanksgiving one is it should always be Montreal, Ottawa, kind of like how every other team, because you think about it, 6 of the 9 teams have Labor Day weekend. That's just how it is, You guys host Winnipeg, Toronto goes to Hamilton, and Edmonton comes down to Calgary. So I feel like that's something with Montreal and Ottawa. It should always be Thanksgiving. But you know what? Like I said, schedule makers, they're not perfect. Even though Montreal is the runaway favorites this year in the East, I still feel like from the West and also from the other 2 teams in the East, because I still don't... I basically have been saying this for weeks. I feel like you can still make a case for 8 of the 9 teams to potentially get to Calgary or to make a run in the playoffs. It's just, which is funny considering that's what's going to be next year. But I feel like with these 8 teams, you can definitely still make cases for everyone to get in. I just feel like at this point, by the end of Labor Day or by the end of the quad header weekend, I think you're going to start to separate the who's good from these guys are serious good. Where it's like the pretend good, where it's like, yeah, you can make the playoffs, but we don't see you winning a game, or you're probably going to get skunked in the final, compared to the teams where it's like, hey, you may want to look at Calgary. May want to look at Calgary hotels, even though I know the league books all that stuff, but just figure of speech.
Yeah, I mean, it's Labor Day. That's where games really start to feel like they take on that extra meaning. You're deep into the playoff race. And we'll see. I mean, I have my qualms about the Bombers. It doesn't look like a good team there. And frankly, I think that record is a little bit of a mirage when you look at how they've won some of those games. But the West is tight right now. They almost lost. They should have lost to Ottawa.
Yeah, they should have lost to Ottawa. That was just that. If there was ever a case of the football gods hate you, that is that case.
Exactly. But the West is tight. Toronto and Hamilton, you can make arguments with their quarterbacks. Like if Trey Ford all of a sudden can kind of put it together, we know how dynamic he can be. Montreal's Montreal. It's a lot of fun football to be had the rest of the way here, unless you're Ottawa fans, which is a shame. I feel the worst for the fans out there.
So I just decided to pull up right now the standings just to take a look at them, and it's like you're saying, basically it goes from 8 wins to 4 wins. That's first to fifth. But and on the note of the Bombers, so right now the Elks are plus 44. You guys are plus 38. This is point differential, by the way, for anyone wondering. The Lions are plus 7. The Stampeders are a whopping plus 51. I feel like that Stampede Bowl game has a lot to do with that. But the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are a negative 30. The even funnier one is that only one team in the East is above plus. So the Argonauts are minus 7, the Ticats are minus 62, and the Red Blacks are minus 145. The Montreal Alouettes are plus 104.
Yeah, facing Montreal will affect that.
Yeah. I just find the one thing with Winnipeg funny, though, because I feel like that's a point where it's like, oh, they don't score that much. No, I feel like something that you should look into when you are 5-5, but you are negative 30. Like, I do think the Bombers losing games like they did on Friday night kind of shows the case of, hey, they are who they are, but also, too, for Edmonton, good teams will always find ways to win and bad teams will always find a way to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. And Edmonton's proven to be a good team. And I've said it before. I've said it on X. I've said it on the show, The Green Zone. It's just Cody Fajardo has turned that franchise around, in my opinion. He's been the adult in the room. He's stabilized the quarterback spot and just helped build this foundation that Mark Killam brought in there when he made him the starter.
Yep.
Of course, they had to start Trey Ford. That felt like something Mark Killam had to do. Ever since they made the move there, that's a mature franchise now. That's a franchise that knows how to win, and they have some real good players. The only knock on them is come playoffs, not a lot of playoff experience. How do they respond to a playoff game? But once again, I have to give credit to Cody Fajardo and what he's done there. Like I said, he's just been the adult in the room there at the quarterback spot and has really just stabilized that franchise.
The big thing with them is just the fact, like I said, you're winning games you should, but then also 2 games like Toronto. Hey, you're -3. Toronto's coming off a game they should have lost to the Calgary Stampeders, but you kind of showed the world, hey, we can take care of these teams, no problem. Or even Friday night, you know what? Hey, you're down 16-0. Guess what? It's nothing. You come back, you win on a walk-off field goal, by which I would say is probably one of the best kickers in the league this year, Vincent Blanchard. Just absolutely. I know he also had that. He had that other clutch kick. I think it was like from 55 or 57 against you guys too, to where. Apparently, in the tunnel at Mosaic Stadium, there were reporters saying he could have made that from 60. Like, it could have been from 60 plus. And it was,
he cleared it pretty good.
Yeah, it's one of those. But my thing with Edmonton come playoff time is more, when things start to get tighter, how do I say this? I don't want to say it because it sounds weird, but when they say the noose gets tighter to where the games get more under pressure, and there's mistakes made, or you need to go down and you need to have a significant drive with, say 7 minutes left. Hey, we need to burn clock. We need to get points. How do those Elks respond? That's what I want to know. Because you look at all the teams right now. I'll say this. BC knows how to win in the play. I'm just looking at teams with one. BC knows how to win. Calgary, I still kind of want to give them their flowers because there's that history there with Dave Dickinson. You guys obviously defending Grey Cup champs. Winnipeg, look, they aren't bad, but we still know they are who they are. They're kind of that cockroach. They're not dead until you squash them. And then you have Hamilton, who was in the East. Hamilton, who could have gone to the Grey Cup last year. You have Toronto, who's won, 2 of the last 4. And then you have Montreal, who's been to 2 of the last 4. And also, guess what? Has won 1, besides teams not named the Toronto Argonauts and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So all those teams know how to win come postseason time. But for a team like Edmonton, that's where I want to know. Because I'm not saying if they go out there and they lose in the East, say if they play Sask in the East final and they lose, and it's like, or BC, just to throw Sask or BC out there, because I feel like there's a very good chance that the West Semi will be Sask and BC. That's just the feeling I'm getting right now. When one of those teams come in to your house, because that's the thing, it's not like, oh, Edmonton's got to go on the road and they play the East, like the semifinal at home, but then they have the final on the road. In your building, because you kind of have that 2023 Argonaut chance to where, look, it's been getting fuller as the year goes on. They're giving their fans a reason to come out and support. But if they get a 40, a 50, just a crazy amount of people at that game because the Elks are in the West Final, the chance to go to the Grey Cup, how do you play? Because we saw the Argonauts when they had 30,000 at BMO Field piss their pants, for lack of a better word. How do the Elks respond when the pressure and the lights are the brightest? That's what we're going to have to figure out about them, but we still have about 2.5 months until we get there.
Yeah, exactly. If you're either Saskatchewan or BC, it's not imperative that you're number 1 seed, in my opinion. You want to be. You'd love to have Edmonton come to your house if that's the case, but I think that you want to go there. Let's see what this other team can do. Now that, as you mentioned, they're dealing with that for the first time. They have pressure, they have expectations. How does that team respond? And so obviously you want the number 1 seed, but if the Edmonton is there, I think there's an opportunity for a team to get a win out there just because of the lack of playoff experience.
And the other thing with it too is with BC as well, I feel like they're gonna with BC right now too. You want seeding to be a factor because I feel like if Nathan Rourke has to go on the road twice, it can only help him out with that overall legacy. Just because when you look at him, hey, are you a BC place merchant? Does weather affect you even though you're from Canada? Because when you look at him, he's won games inside BC place, no problem. But it's hey, you have to go to Winnipeg in sub temperatures. Regina on Halloween night, who knows? There might be kids trick or treating in their snow jackets, like you and I probably did as young children. That's another thing to look at with all this as well. It's just because when that time of year, Mother Nature's unpredictable. I remember, I think it was Claire Hanna from TSN was covering the West Final last year, and I remember she did a video, I think, on the amount of layers she wore, and that was the first Saturday in November. So those are factors as well that play into this. But I feel like for right now, you have three teams. Those three teams I feel like are playing with house money, and then Winnipeg and Calgary is just kind of like trying to stay alive as well.
Yeah, I agree in terms of that, and yeah, it gets cold in Saskatchewan and Winnipeg when it gets there. That's why they're moving the season back or forward a little bit because they don't want to have the Grey Cup be decided in a blizzard or have -40 cause fans to not want to go out there. And yeah, Nathan Rourke, in my opinion, he has to kind of prove he can go on the road and win. He hasn't done it yet in the playoffs. It's been tough environments,
Yep.
absolutely. But you have to eventually get a win on the road to have that legacy, and he hasn't done it yet. And I don't think they can get to first place. They
No.
might. They never know what kind of run they go on, but I think you're on the road at least one playoff game if that does end up happening. And so see what he can do. But that's what I love about playoff football, though, is sometimes the elements make it a real fun game.
Exactly. And then when you flip it onto the east side of things, I will almost say this, but I feel like Saturday really is a must-win for both teams. I really feel like that Hamilton-Calgary game, which we'll get into predictions in a second, but I look at that game and I'm just like, I think if either team loses, it's pretty much not that they're eliminated, but it's pretty much, hey, you have like your margin to error goes from like this to that, but then also to you're effectively playing playoff football for the next 6 weeks. But I will say this with Hamilton. I believe after this weekend, they are still the only team that has only had one bye week the entire year. They have 2 bye weeks in the last quarter of the season. So for a team like Hamilton, you're probably not getting Bo back. I know Bo posted the video of walking. Mm-hmm. I believe he took the air cast off, but I'm like, it's 6 weeks. But I just feel like at this point, he would only play if they were to get to the East Final. But at that point, I don't think anything's guaranteed. But just going on the point of everything for this weekend, though, I think that's a true game where it's if you win that game, you kind of control your own destiny, and if you lose, it's kind of like we need help.
Yeah, I agree that both those teams need a win, especially. Vern Adams Jr. He's practicing, but we'll wait and see exactly what his status is for this game.
Dietrich Mills is as well.
Dietrich Mills is there, and so that's good for them. But it feels like it's nearing must-win territory. I'm not quite there, but well, maybe for Hamilton it is because those losses are starting to really add up in the East there, but. Calgary, another weird team that I expect to be better, but that defense continues to give up big plays. You need to start putting some wins together because we're getting to Labor Day. You're running out of time, and you lose that especially for Hamilton. You're not getting first place, but Hamilton, who knows if you're making the playoffs with the crossover. And Calgary, I think, and Winnipeg are searching for a crossover spot right now.
So that's where it's really going to come down to the brass tacks of things, and that's why I feel like. Say, if, for example, if Toronto and Hamilton walk away with wins this weekend, that Labor Day game effectively is you're playing for a home playoff game in the East semifinal.
Mm-hmm. It'll be big.
I'm still waiting, and I was saying this a lot on Saturday. I'm still waiting to see if I'm going to be in Hamilton or not. Just need the media relations people to get through this week and then be like, hey, Griff, come on down. That's all I'm waiting for from those guys. So if you're listening to this, if you're Hamilton PR, just remember, I've been let in the building before, and I'll come back. I can't refuse the free popcorn they offer there. Basically in the press meal area they have like this huge like the bucket you would keep towels in like the corner of the bathroom.
Yeah,
like not like a hamper, but like where the towel like your mom or you may have it in your house, but it's like where the towels you use to shower go in. It's basically like a basket of that size where you just have like unlimited free salty stadium popcorn, and I just keep going back and back for it every time I'm there.
Something special about stadium popcorn. It just hits different.
It's like movie theater popcorn. Last night I had some, and today for lunch, today was work snack. I had the rest of that with me. It was like a quarter of the bag left that my wife and I shared with. We went to see Spider-Man, and I'm taking this as a work snack.
Best snack popcorn. I always enjoy some good popcorn.
Good popcorn is any popcorn is good popcorn. Anyway, this is the part of the show we flip the ticker on. We go over the games in I almost had a conniption when I said this because the last time you were on was week 3. It is now week 13. We have 8 weeks left of CFL football, and we start in Winnipeg on. That's the other reason why I know the season's getting old, because people started tweeting this last Thursday night. The fact that there's no more Thursday CFL football for the remainder of the season, and soon we'll be losing Sunday and obviously Monday with Labor Day to where it's only Fridays and Saturdays going forward. That's a couple weeks away, though. I will say this confidently. I like Montreal to win this game, but I feel like for Winnipeg, this is a game where I want to say, show me you're a capable team that can keep this close. That's what I'm looking more for this game. Can you force out the Alouettes to play mistakes, because we've seen them play them tough before? Or is this a game where Montreal runs away with it and we kind of go, it's kind of not the end of the road for Winnipeg, but it's just one of those like, hey, it may not be your year.
I'm out on the Bombers. I think it's done this year. I think you're starting to see the age catch up with them with that core. The way they've lost these past few games, like to lose to BC's third string quarterback the way they did, to give up a 16-0 lead and allow the Elks to come back like that. I don't think this is. I think Montreal is going to continue their kind of run of beating teams handily, and I expect that this week.
So I was never saying that Montreal wins and Winnipeg covers. I'm just saying, for a Winnipeg Blue Bomber team, show us the Winnipeg Blue Bombers of old, but I don't think that happens. I think Montreal continues on this destructive warpath, because next Friday night, that's the test for Montreal. When Nathan Rourke and the BC Lions make that cross-country trip to come into your building and play some football. So we'll see how that goes, which also I just realized I'll get into it in a second. But yeah, that's just how I look at this game. I think that I think Montreal wins, and I think they cover the 7.5, no problem. Hell, they were 12.5 against the REDBLACKS, and they won by 30. So
yeah, like I said, I'm out on Winnipeg right now. They've shown nothing the way they're losing. It just feels like this season they have to make another change. In my opinion, it starts at the offensive coordinator. Tommy Condell was always kind of a weird pick, in my opinion, when you have Brady Oliveira and you go to an offensive coordinator that historically does not use his running backs. It never seemed like it was going to work.
At one point, Cat fans showed up in Fire Condell t-shirts, and it happened. So Winnipeg Blue Bombers fans, you may want to follow suit. The game we talked about earlier, Calgary versus Hamilton. Calgary currently a -6 favorite. I will say this, though. I do think the Stamps win, but I do think the Cats keep it close. I just don't think the Cats are that kind of team where, look, I know they lost by 19 last week, but you have to put a lot of factors aside. Just the offense didn't play that well. The defense kind of made some mistakes to let Toronto, take advantage of opportunities. But the more important thing, though, is that both teams played through the pouring rain. And I don't know what the weather's going to be like in Calgary, but I definitely think it's going to be better than what it was in Toronto on Saturday night. So I think the Stamps win coming off the bye week, getting healthy. But for the Cats, like I said, the Cats have to keep this close, because if the Cats lose this game bad, it's kind of the same fate as the Bombers, where it's just, yep, we're out on them, and that Labor Day can mean nothing.
Yeah, I think so. I think Calgary, I've been saying it all year, I expect them to win games, but they find ways to lose sometimes. That defense, I feel like it just should be better, and it's just not. They just aren't making the plays. Hamilton, Trey Ford, I like them to keep it close because, as you mentioned, it feels like their season is starting to really get on the line here. Yep. I think they'll find that desperation. But once again, I'm going to pick Calgary to find a way to win and hope that defense can finally make a play here.
We're the exact same way. And then our game Saturday night, I will say this, though. I know Sask only scored 16 last week, but I do like the over for this one. I believe it's currently sitting in the 60s somewhere. So we'll get back to it in a second. But I will say this, though. I'm not sure why the sports books have the Riders as the home favorite by such a wide margin, and it's 62.5, so I will be taking that over. But I will say this, though. I don't know if Toronto wins, but I do think Toronto covers that 4.5 number as an underdog.
It feels that way, especially as I mentioned, all penalties, miscues. That defensive backfield is giving up a lot of big passing plays. I mean, Chad Kelly, before halftime in the first game, hit 2 big passes, and Toronto scored right before halftime.
Yep.
It feels like it's going to be close. It feels like both these teams want to go out and play some good football and prove that they can start doing it consistently.
Yep.
It 4.5. It's always a weird one. You never know in the CFL. I could see Toronto covering that, but I think just at home, this team has responded so good to adversity since Corey Mace has been there. I think the Riders win. I'm that 4.5. I'm not. I could see Toronto doing it. I could also see them maybe just losing by 5. I don't think it's going to be a blowout.
No, I think this is gonna be a similar game to what we saw back at the end of June, where it's just taking advantage of opportunities. I know Trevor Harris had that. I believe it was either a fumble or a interception right at the beginning of the game, and then Toronto kind of took a hold from there. And then you also Janarian and Grant have the run back there. Although the one thing I will say though is that last time AJ Ouellette didn't also play in this game, but Quay Conley had quite the game for himself as well in the first half, and then Toronto made the proper adjustments to stop him. So I really think this game is going to come down to which defense can get the turnovers, but also to which quarterback makes the plays when they have to make a play.
Yeah, what Chad Kelly shows up, the 4 touchdown guy or the 4 interception guy?
Yeah, what is it? The Jack? Let's my nickname for him: the Dr. Jekyll or the Mr. Kelly. Which one shows up? The other thing I will say though with Toronto is after the Calgary game, they were a little ahead of themselves, being like, "If you thought this was good, wait till next week." Didn't hear a single lick of that in the locker room. Everyone was more just happy to win, but know that hey, we got to turn the page quickly, so they know it's a business trip when they go out to Regina this weekend. You know the expression "fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, shame on me; fool me, can't be fooled again." Fool me once, shame on me, never do it again. Last week, I thought, hey, this would be the week Ottawa wins. Peak CFL. They're going to beat the Montreal Alouettes here. A high spread. Nope, not taking care of that. I think this is a game that the BC Lions travel cross-country and handle no problem. I also do expect the BC Lions probably to stay out east for the remainder of the week, considering they play on Sunday night and then they play again on Friday. They have a very short turnaround going into what I will say. I think those games, just before I don't think we really need to harp on this game that much, but that game next Friday night, I think, is big for the sole factor of if the BC Lions can have good showings against the Alouettes, they kind of show the rest of the world that they mean business.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be the measuring stick for that BC Lions team. And if they are back, or if this is kind of just one of those early seasons runs we see teams go on, proving what you can do against the best. They did it against the Riders. Can they do it against Montreal? I don't see Ottawa keeping this close. Yep. You just always that, well, it's the CFL. You never know. But BC should handle business here. No problem.
They should. Obviously, like we said earlier, there was them letting goes. Like I believe there was Shawn Burke that was fired earlier on Sunday. There was another guy, I believe I blank on his last name, but I believe his first name is Adrian, where Oseg's kind of making those changeovers. They know what they're going through. And I know everyone's like, oh, let the season play out. I'm like, well, when you're 20-61-1, I believe is Shawn's record, plus the fact they're 0-10 right now. They bring in Jim Pop as an advisor, but I feel like he's more there to help get someone new. The more I'm thinking about it too, I do think that he will have say on the roster, but I do expect Ryan Dinwiddie to lose that general manager title for 2027. But if you're the REDBLACKS, I think you have to start figuring out who exactly is going to be. You know how they say in October when teams are bad, it's kind of playing for roster spots? I think you're already seeing that in the nation's capital. Guys who are going to be there next year versus guys who aren't. But if you're the Saskatchewan Roughriders, do you call Ryan Dinwiddie and say, what can we get for AJ Allen?
See, that's been an interesting topic of conversation in terms of AJ Allen, because
just heard it a couple of times, and you're the Riders dude that I have on the show, so I want to ask you.
No, I've heard it brought up too. Fans want AJ Allen back. I mean, I want AJ Allen back. He's one of the best interviews in the entire CFL. It makes my job a lot easier when AJ Allen's on the roster. But you're not really desperate for a Canadian linebacker. The linebackers for the Riders have arguably been the best part of their defense and team. Josh Woods has played really well since coming over from BC. He's been one of the more consistent guys. Antoine Brooks, you're not replacing him with AJ Allen because it's different position. He's more of the cover linebacker. He's leading the Riders in tackles, I believe, still. And Jameer Thurman, we know how good he is. AJ Allen, the fit just doesn't make sense right now with how good the linebacker core has been, and you're not desperate to find a Canadian starter. CJ Reavis actually is a guy that makes a little bit more sense, just because this team, the safety spot, they used CJ Reavis as the safety during their Grey Cup in the playoff run. They have the flexibility to put an American back there. I think if you were to see a trade, it might be for CJ Reavis, if anyone. I'm not saying they will. It's a big contract you'd have to take on.
Yeah.
But I think that's more likely than bringing AJ Allen in.
Do you see a world? I'm blanking on his name right now, but the assistant general manager. I know he's been kind of brought up as the next hot, GM candidate, the assistant GM in Saskatchewan. I think there's a world where he kind of maybe takes interviews, but I don't. I feel like if he's going to leave, it's going to be for the right job, and I don't know if someone like of his nature is going to want to go to Ottawa right now. While they're, because I don't even want to say it's bad, but it's more weird than just overall bad, where it's just the vibe. It's off right now. It's like, hey, you want to go from a 5-star steakhouse and manage an Applebee's? I
Mhm.
don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say if I'm the Ottawa REDBLACKS, I'm calling Kyle Carson and
That's it, Kyle
seeing if,
Carson.
if he what his availability is, if he's willing to come over. He's done such a great job with Jeremy O'Day here, and I think he is going to be one of the next great general managers when he gets that shot in this league. His eye for talent's been great. He's been through Calgary where they did a lot of winning, came to Saskatchewan, a lot of winning here, and putting together these rosters. It's weird in Ottawa because the Ryan Dinwiddie thing is there. He's kind of getting control. How much say are you going to give him? But I'm calling Kyle Carson and offering him a job if I'm the Ottawa REDBLACKS as a possibility there. Absolutely, he's earned it. And another or a name to keep an eye on. Maybe not next year because there's no real spot. But when does Mark Mueller get his head coaching opportunity?
I was starting to think about that, but I honestly, because that's the other comparison. Because you know how every year, like obviously it's 32 versus 9, but every year in the NFL, like you could probably make a list right now of like 8 or 9
Mm-hmm.
guys where it's like, hey, their jobs could be on the line going into this year. I feel like with the CFL, you don't see that where it's like, yeah, these guys are there. Because when you look at every single coach in the league, regardless of BC, like Buck just got there.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Dickinson and O'Shea, I think, have carte blanche to when they get to call the shot when they leave. Mark Killam, no. Corey Mace, no. Scott Milanovich kind of has that alibi of, hey, we did lose Bo Levi to injury. Dinwiddie, even though it's been terrible, just got there. And plus two with the Shawn Burke firing, the ops cap is kind of a,
Mm-hmm.
they're
There's
not, they're not,
there's there's no spot for Mark Mueller right now.
yeah,
Absolutely. But he's another name 2-3 years down. When does someone come and get him?
exactly. It's kind of like, say, if Hamilton doesn't figure it out next year, or if Mike O'Shea does decide to walk away from the Bombers, it's like one of those. Even though I know Mark Mueller going from Sask to BC, Sask to Winnipeg would be interesting, but then again, Mark Killam went from the Stamps to the Elks, so I can see a world where it's like that, or even if a Dave Dickinson does decide. And I don't think Dave would more or less retire. I think he would do the lateral move upstairs like his predecessor, who I actually ran into Saturday and blocked the stairs for me in the press box, John Huffnagel. True story, by the way. Who decided to do the same thing, leave coaching, and then move up to more of that manager. And
Mhm.
I like saying POHO because that's hockey, but I don't know. Be a POFO, the president of football ops, like kind of that move, and then bring in the next person to do there. Because I don't think there's anyone on the Calgary staff right now that you could see him handing the keys to. But definitely, he looks at a guy like a Mark Mueller in a couple of years if he's ready to step away and say, "Hey, job's yours, kid. Let's see what you can
Mhm.
do."
Yeah.
Kind of like what Buck Pierce just did in BC.
Yeah, absolutely. He's interesting, but yeah, no, Kyle Carson, that is a name. If I'm Ottawa, I'm at least making the call and seeing what interest is there.
Exactly, because like with the Ryan Dinwiddie thing, obviously he wanted the thing with Toronto and him leaving is he did want more of the roster control, but it's more just the opportunity. I just think this year it was just about figuring it out to where there is going to be the pressure there next year, not just because of how this year's gone, but because 8 of the 9 teams make it next year, and if you're
Mhm.
because no matter who's number 9, it's going to be humiliating. But it's if it's Ottawa, that's the team on the outside looking in, there's just a bunch of head scratching considering, what, like the ops cap's taking a hit. We don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be, even though I do have the speculations about Kelly, who's is going into his last year of his contract, reuniting with his former head coach. And you're losing a good chunk of your stadium to renovation starting next year. So if you're the Red Blacks, it's kind of you got to turn the ship around quickly. You got to start,
Mhm.
finding ways to chop wood at TD Place.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree completely. Get it turned around right away there.
Yeah. And then for when you look at this week as a whole, I feel like this week's games, I don't know if it's the strongest slate, but I feel like we're going to start to learn a lot about these teams. Like, learn who are they good? Are they bad? Like the one thing I'll say about this BC Ottawa game, if BC I think is a serious contender, this is a game where you cover that number no problem and you don't think twice about it. That's all I will say about this one because if Ottawa finds a way to win, it destroys BC's credibility going into a huge game next Friday because if they go into Ottawa, they take care of the Red Blacks no problem, you have all the confidence in the world when it comes to facing off against the Montreal Alouettes on September 4th.
Yeah. To me, when I look at this week, it's not really must wins, but it's you have to go out and have good performances and do what you have to kind of do. And for BC, that's beating Ottawa by a lot. For the Riders, cleaning up penalties, good performance. For Argos, good performance. Right? You have to start seeing the good performances because this feels like the type of the spot in the year where if you're going to start improving, now's the time to start that upward trajectory. And if it starts going down, you're not recovering from it.
Exactly. It's basically the whole thing where it's like the candle is basically like when you light the firework, is it going to go off and is it going to be a dud or is it going to go off and you're going to get a spectacular light show? And for a lot of these teams, like a Riders, like a Toronto, like a BC, you want that spectacular light show and you don't need the Wile E. Coyote dud of a firework display.
Exactly.
Yeah. But no, that's all for us. We have 8 weeks left of this beautiful, beautiful season. Everyone out there. Oh, and by the way, before we go, I know you had AJ Allen as a great interview. Mine was Wynton McManus, who I got to see Saturday night play against the Toronto Argonauts. But yeah, that's just one thing I want to say because that quickly came to mind too. Because basically the way it works to get to the press conferences now, we have to walk from the one side of the stadium over to the other side, past all the guys shaking hands, and I kind of saw him on the field, and we kind of acknowledged each other, which felt cool. Felt cool for me to have happen.
I haven't got a chance to interview Wynton. I hear he's good. Maybe one day.
He's good for the senses of he will talk to, so some guys like when it's bad, they're kind of like, it's the cliche answers and just get me out of here. For him, it's no matter good or bad, he will have something to say.
That's what I always like about Micah Johnson was win or loss, you could go there, get a good interview with him. There's guys like that who no matter what, they realize what we're doing. It's our jobs. We have to ask you about the loss and give us something. And right. It's just, some guys are fully aware of that.
100%. 100%. Take a deep breath and realize that 448 of the episodes of this podcast are in the books. Britton, it was a blast to always get in the chat as you as always. The dogs are always barking on here. My little girl's she hasn't really found her voice for that yet, but maybe one day I will discover that, but we'll cross that bridge when we do get there.
It's always fun. You never know what you're going to say that sets them off, right? It's talking about Sam Emilus, apparently. The dogs heard that and wanted some answers.
It's the Emilus barking effect. What can we say? For Britton Gray of the Green Zone, I'm Griff Bordegon. Hopefully you enjoyed episode number 448. We'll see you next week because as NFL season starts up, this train just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. Have a great week 13 of the CFL season, everybody.